Join us.
Let's walk the talk.
This is 702.
All right, so we are joined now on the line by various experts or guests who help us make sense of this particular appointment, what it means. I've got Ryan Smith, who's a Deputy Spokesperson on International Relations. We'll get their view. We'll also get the view of an academic and, of course, Chairperson of the Public Interest South Africa. He's reacted to the news, of course. I don't know if you saw the statement coming from the ANC yesterday. The ANC welcoming the appointment, of course, saying that the move reaffirms government's strategic intent to deepen bilateral and multilateral relations anchored in mutual respect and shared interest. I'm joined on the line, as I said, by the DA Deputy Spokesperson on International Relations. Ryan Smith joins me now on the line. Good morning, Ryan. Welcome to Radio 702, and thank you for your time. Just the DA's first take on the news coming from presidency on this appointment of Mcebisi Jonas.
Thanks, Tshidi. Good morning to your listeners. I mean, look, it remains the prerogative of the president to decide who diplomatic envoys are. However, if you look at the fact that the relationship with the United States of America is in a very perilous position at the moment and really on the rocks, we need to be extremely pragmatic about who we send to Washington. And we need to be very, very careful to make sure that we vet potential candidates very carefully, because clearly there's a lot more detail that goes into these appointments and certainly a lot more scrutiny. And I think that we really need to learn a lesson here with the USA and just be a little bit more careful in the process going forward.
Is Mcebisi the right person? I don't hear that being said. I understand what you're looking for more broadly. Is the DA happy with the pick of Mcebisi Jonas as the special envoy?
Look, I think that it's wise to send someone who's a businessman. I think that you've spoken about that earlier on the show. You need somebody, primarily who's going there to represent South Africa's economic interests, which is the most, I think, important factor that is now placed at risk with our perilous relationship that we have with the United States. I think it's very good that Mcebisi Jonas is a businessman, that he has some business acumen, and that he can go and represent the economic interests, certainly over and above the diplomatic interests of South Africa there as well. It is very unfortunate, obviously, that he has, or that his comments previously could be seen as an impediment to getting the ear of the administration. And I think it's important that we work to repair that relationship. And we certainly hope that the Trump administration will be able to maybe look beyond that and see this as an important, as I said, economic deployment. And I think in that line, Mcebisi Jonas should be, we hope, I think, a very good appointment.
Is there a difference of opinions in the DA about this appointment? I noticed yesterday, I mean, what you're saying is very much in line with what one of your ministers, D. McPherson, put out, saying that Mcebisi Jonas is a solid pair of hands at this time. Yet at the same time, Emma Powell, who's the spokesperson for the DA's international relations, we couldn't find her yesterday, but she did put out a tweet, and her tweet was a simple thing. It was a retweet of those Ahmed Kathrada comments. Is there something to be made of that? Is there a difference of opinions about who should be, if Mcebisi is actually fit for purpose?
Well, look, I think there's a series of personal opinions that people have about any diplomatic appointment. I mean, regardless of who you ask, some people may say that it's a good appointment, others may say it's a bad appointment. The fact of the matter is that we need to look at diplomatic appointments, certainly with the United States of America, in terms of strategy. What is this appointment bringing to South Africa strategically? Does this person have the relevant qualifications to get what we want out of this relationship with a foreign state? And it's not the purview of personal opinion, quite frankly. We need to look at it in a very impartial and objective manner, and that's certainly how diplomacy is carried out around the world. So, various people within all parties, I think, are going to have their personal opinions on Mcebisi Jonas. I think it's wise to raise things that he may have said previously, his biography, certain things that he might have done in his previous positions, because we need to be aware of where this person comes from, what their particular profile is. It's important when we look at those positions. But ultimately, it must be done in a manner that is constructive, that is going to represent South Africa's best interests, but also bearing in mind how we are going to be perceived and how we are going to be received by the country of posting.
And just very quickly, Ryan, the priorities, just a very quick list of what the DA thinks is important for this envoy to get on top of.
Well, first and foremost, we need to repair the relationship with the United States of America. It has been, I would say, almost completely broken. We know that the chances of the African Growth and Opportunity Act being renewed are very, very slim at this point. And South Africa is deeply, deeply reliant on the preferential market access that we have to the United States because of that legislation. And so in the wake of that not being reviewed, South Africa is going to face real economic hardship. So we need to, first and foremost, repair the relationship with the United States, bearing in mind that the likelihood of the GO being renewed is very, very slim. And on the back of that, we need to try and secure, certainly from a more bilateral level, greater trade opportunity with the United States. You know, if we don't get a GO renewed, it doesn't mean that we can't secure a new trade deal or a new opportunity for South Africa in the United States. You know, Trump, regardless of what people may say about him, he is a businessman. And I think that he knows what's in the best interest of the USA. And it's up to our diplomats to go there and leverage that in the best interest of South Africa to make sure that we get what we want. So economically, first and foremost, I think we need to look at that pragmatically as our first objective. Smooth over relations, fix access to trade in the United States, and move forward, I think, on that basis.
All right, thank you so much. That's Ryan Smith, who's the DA Deputy Spokesperson on International Relations. I want to bring on now Professor Christopher Isike, who's Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria. Professor, good morning and welcome to Radio 702.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Professor, it is a critical time for such an appointment to be made, and I imagine what he faces is a mammoth task. Your thoughts about what we are attempting to do, and not picking an ambassador as yet, but actually opting to send the Mcebisi Jonas as the first of our special envoys to the U.S.?
But look, in my view, my first preference is for South Africa not to send anyone to the U.S. at this stage until it knows exactly what the U.S. wants and whether it can, and then determine for itself whether it can give the U.S. that. But also wait for the U.S. to play its hand, and the U.S. has played its hand to some extent in the appointment of an ambassador. I believe that the president is doing this at this time because he probably wants to use this appointment of an envoy to negotiate the acceptance of the envoy. I mean, use his own America's negotiation with South Africa on accepting America's ambassador to South Africa, and use that to then push for America's acceptance of an envoy at this stage, unless, of course, Mr. Jonas would be elevated eventually to become an ambassador. That's a possibility. If that is what the president has in mind, then it makes sense to send an envoy, get that envoy in, and start the repair of the relationship before, upgrading him to a full ambassador if the envoy makes good use of this opportunity.
Professor, if I'm hearing you correctly, it almost sounds like Mcebisi Jonas is actually being sent on a fact-finding mission that would have been easier if he knew exactly what he was targeting. What do you expect him to find? Because part of what Ibrahim Rasool had said when he came back home, or at least in that lecture at the Mapungube Institute for Strategic Strategic Planning, Mistra, yeah, sorry, I'm trying to remember what it was. But part of that lecture that he was participating in, virtual lecture, he then said that the State Department is not set up. And when you are meant to go knock on doors to fix relations, there are actually no doors because the appointments have not been made. What do we then expect him to find when we aren't sure, 100% sure, on paper at least, what the issue is?
Well, that's why I said that the president may be tying his appointment to the appointment of the U.S. ambassador to South Africa. So usually when an ambassador is appointed by a sending country to a host country, that ambassador, there are discussions between the foreign relations departments of both countries for acceptance, right? So the receiving country can indicate that they do not want a particular appointment for any reason. And then there are discussions and negotiations. My belief is that South Africa may be using this opportunity to put forward someone that the administration would have to then accept in order for South Africa to accept the U.S. ambassador to South Africa. Now, that would be a win, and part of those negotiations would be for the envoy to be able to have access to, for example, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to open opportunities for mending the relations and then getting into discussions around what the U.S. really want and what South Africa can do to mend relations between both countries. And this is where perhaps the appointment of Mr. Jonas is significant because, one, he's a business person, two, he's very steeped in the liberation and ANC, of course, South African politics, would be in a very good position to be able to push South Africa's interests in ways that will advance South Africa without necessarily offending the sensibilities of the United States.
The comments that were uncovered that he made back in 2020 when Trump was attempting to become the 46th U.S. president that didn't succeed when Joe Biden became president. Will they matter? How complicated does it make this mission for Mcebisi Jonas?
Well, I'm sure that the United States will not be looking for someone who has never said anything about the United States, to become an envoy or someone they can talk to. Otherwise, South Africa would not be talking to Trump himself, right? There is politics involved. There's also business involved. Like many have said, Trump is transactional. He's a businessman. And to be honest, he doesn't respect weak leaders. So if you're able to present yourself as someone who's able to explain yourself and present your points, keep to the issues, I'm sure that he would see value in accepting and glossing over whatever Jonas may have said. I mean, there are people in his cabinet right now who said horrible things about him, and today they are all in the same cabinet. So that shouldn't really be an issue at all. In fact, like I said, if they are expecting that to be someone who has never said anything about Trump, then they will not find such a person, in South Africa.
Lastly, Professor, there's always voices that say South Africa must make a decision about what to prioritize. Many people believe that what's happening between South Africa and the US is actually about the ICGA matter. It's about the Middle East and South Africa's stance with the people of Palestine, saying that South Africa must actually put itself first, that it must think about its economic position in the world and its economic concerns, saying that it must backtrack. It must actually withdraw from that particular matter. And also, at the same time, people compare it to how Lesotho's responded. I mean, Lesotho supposedly is seemingly pandering to the U.S. to try and make sure that it eases relations and makes things easier for themselves. Your sense of, I'm asking you to make a comparison, if you may, really between the two different responses and the calls for South Africa to change its mind and its stance as far as its own foreign policy approach is concerned.
Well, first of all, South Africa is not Lesotho, so South Africa doesn't have to necessarily pander. South Africa has critical resources that the United States needs more than South Africa needs from the U.S. And if South Africa also has China as a trading partner. If this is only about economic interest and money, South Africa would probably be more interested in pandering to China. South Africa has not done just that. It has pandered to the U.S. as much as it panders to China. Why? Because it believes that its interests are important, but also those interests are tied to values. And those values determine its foreign policy. So it is the question of values that made it undermine, if you like, the U.S. 2 years ago when it allowed Russia to come do, the test run that it did, the military drills it did in South Africa. Right? It was based on friendship, and friendship is important to South Africa, especially when you look at its history. So it's a combination of things, but the fact that South Africa continues to maintain it to follow due process and diplomatic channels to resolve its problems with the U.S. indicates that it considers that friendship to be important. And that friendship is not only about economics, it's also about the people-to-people relations and history of people who helped South Africa to get to apartheid right there in the U.S. at a people level.
All right. I want to leave it at that. Thank you so much. That's Professor Christopher Isike, Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria. I want to quickly bring in now Chairperson of Public Interest South Africa, Tebogo Khaas, who's joining me also on the line. Tebogo, good morning. Welcome to Radio 702. You and I had a very late night conversation about Mcebisi Jonas. We went kind of back and forth for a little bit, and I see that you have released a statement. And the big recognition here is also that the special envoy, as much as it's important, it cannot deal with the challenges alone, can it?
Absolutely.
Oh, no. The line is really patchy, Tebogo. I'm going to ask for the producers to just stabilize your line for a second. While I do that, though, I'm going to play one or two of your voice notes on this particular topic.
Tshidi, hi. I hear what the gentleman is saying, but we need to look at the bigger perspective here. Are we really fighting for a relationship with somebody who does not want us there? Why are we fighting so hard? The United States has just over around 300 million people. The world is full of people above 6 billion people. There are other avenues we can look at. There are other markets we can diversify. We don't necessarily have to look at the US as the all and all, as the almighty. If they don't want to trade, then they don't want to trade. Let's find other markets and go elsewhere. We are not really forced to really fight for this relationship that we are seeing that we are currently not wanted. We move away, we take everything we have elsewhere, and we build other relationships. You start from scratch. We don't have to rely on America only. There are bigger and greater things out there other than the Americas. There's South America, there's Canada, there's Asia, there's Russia, there's Australia. There's a lot of other places we can go to. Can we just start using our imagination and not only focus on America?
Thank you for that WhatsApp. We can start from scratch. I think that's easier said than done. I'm going to try again with Tebogo Khaas. Tebogo, welcome back. I think hopefully your line is steady and it's playing ball now. The challenges are mammoth. People say we can start from scratch. It's not that easy, actually. A lot is at risk.
Absolutely. It's not that easy to, and thank you again for calling me on the normal telecom line than the Starlink that you tried earlier.
That's a terrible jab. It's okay. We know how you feel about Elon Musk. Note taken. I'm sure Lesotho's heard you too. Continue.
Yeah, but on a more serious note, we really shouldn't, like we said in the statement, we really should recognize that it cannot be left to one person to resolve what seems to be a singular problem afflicting Trump, not only South Africa, but across the board. And certainly, it takes two to tango. So we should rely on both the goodwill on both countries, as well as mutual respect, and the commitment by both parties, by both governments, to ensure that these concerns are addressed. And it is only when we treat each other with respect that we can then be able to make progress. But if we are going to be condescending, as Mr. Trump has been on all instances when he deals with South Africa, it cannot be that we are left to be beggars, or to be seen as beggars, or to be left to be seen as kowtowing to whatever he or any other leader, for that matter, throws at us.
The issue about respectability is what you and I actually argued about in essence, because while you make a very valid point, in my head, it takes somebody who's logical, who's decent, to function within the realm to operate within those rules, those terms of engagement with people. Unfortunately, we are dealing with somebody who has shown himself to not care what the rules are. My argument is always that if he did care about rules and order and diplomacy and how to engage with others, then we wouldn't be here as a country, because the disinformation he continues to peddle would not be a factor. The concerns you have, if at all, about what Mcebisi Jonas will have. I saw some South Africans saying, a lot of people on Twitter saying that, after the Ahmed Kathrada comments came to light, that, he'll be turned back upon arrival. He will not be allowed to get through the airport, to get through customs. He'll be stopped there and then. And I don't fancy it being impossible, to be honest.
Look, there's no guarantee that anybody will be treated with respect by Trump. Even those who may have been singing, even if you were to say Kenkunene and others who are always praising Trump, yes, and the Republicans. There's no guarantee that Trump will act rationally. So that would be the biggest insult. He had a whole president of Ukraine diminished to a small boy.
Yes.
But not only him, but also his cabinet ministers who weighed in. And you can therefore not, Trump is mercurial. He's not somebody that you can really predict what mood he will be at when unless, of course, you're appeasing him, then he'll be very nice to you. But we're not going there, or we shouldn't be sending somebody there to go and appease him or to kowtow to before him, like kiss his ring. Because certainly, as a sovereign, we also, much as we really respect the U.S. and value the trade between the two countries, it cannot be that we actually give away our own dignity because of one leader who will be gone, by the way, in 4 years or so.
Right.
And then we will have to then work back and try and recover our own dignity, which have been shredded before.
Right. I was going to leave it at that. The line is starting to behave like a Starlink line all over again. That's Tebogo Khaas, who's chairperson of Public Interest South Africa. You know that issue of Vladimir Zelensky? I almost forgot about Ukraine's president, who's actually due in this country on a working visit, I think next week, if I'm correct. He was berated. And from the time that Trump won the U.S. elections, Vladimir went above and beyond to make himself amenable to him, to try and pander to Trump. And look at what it all amounted to. And that's the thing about all the countries that want to cut a deal or get something out of the U.S. is you must think twice about what it's like to go to Washington. Think twice about the White House and how he likes to put a play, right? The political theater for the global media, the eyes that are watching. I mean, I'm addicted to those 11:30. I used to be addicted to those 11:30 Rose Garden briefings for the wrong reasons, obviously. It's 10:30 here.